Hello everyone, my name is Mackenzie Henderson and I'm currently attending Algonquin College in the Police Foundations program. In this instructional video, I will be discussing the first officer to arrive at a crime scene. Some of the topics that I will be touching upon are as follows. What is a crime scene and its objectives? Basic steps to be followed upon arrival at a crime scene. Scene investigations plan, dealing with witnesses as well as suspects, securing and protecting the scene, the use of the notebook by the officer, legal issues, securing evidence, and lastly, how to deal with the media. Arguably, the most important person at a crime scene is the first officer to arrive. The first responding officer often makes or breaks a crime scene. The manner in which he initially handles a crime scene can dictate how things will go in the overall investigation. Firstly, let's start off with a brief description of a crime scene and its objectives.
What is a crime scene? A crime scene can be defined as any location where one or more series of events involved in the commission of a crime occurred. This includes 1. Any location where a crime scene was actually committed. 2. Any location where evidence of the crime is located. And lastly, any location where evidence of the crime is known to have been previously located.
So we are now moving into the objectives of a crime. So firstly, you need to confirm that the crime has actually occurred. And in doing so, you have to confirm that the crime occurred in a manner in which it was reported to you. If the crime has indeed occurred, you can identify the appropriate criminal charges involved with the crime or the event. Identify the victims or other people that are involved in the event or the crime. Arrest and charge the people responsible for the crime or the events that have occurred. Identify and interview possible witnesses that are involved. Reconstruct the events, assessing all available evidence to determine the true facts of the crime or event. In doing so, you will gather the necessary evidence to prove the facts in issue, or otherwise known as actus reus, of the crime. Document all of the circumstances and the events and present them fairly in the appropriate judicial proceeding.
Steps to be followed upon arrival as the first responding officer.
Step 1. Prior to even exiting your patrol car, you should request that dispatch obtain any assistance of however many officers that you need to help manage the crime scene. 2. Start to stabilize matters as quickly as possible. Instruct dispatch to notify persons such as your supervisor, identification officers, and if need be, medical personnel, otherwise known as an ambulance, to assist you at the scene. 3. You need to make sure that your number one goal is to preserve life. You need to respond immediately to any injured people and ensure that you keep others from being injured. So, in doing so, you're stabilizing the suspects and the victims. 4. Locate witnesses and obtain their names, address, telephone numbers, as well as their date of birth. Step 5. Start to begin to secure the scene by establishing checkpoints at entrances and exits. In doing so, you are ensuring that there's no further access in and out of the crime scene. This could be done by placing yellow crime scene tape around the entire area to establish a perimeter. Step 6. As new officers come onto the scene, you should assign one to stay with the injured and monitor their conditions. That officer should also gather any information from the victims to pass on to you. Step 7. Assign another officer to stand guard over any found evidence to prevent contamination until the forensics team has shown up. Step 8. Obtain information without witnesses regarding the person responsible for the offense, if the suspect has already left before you got there. Step 9. It's suggested to prepare a rough sketch of the crime scene in your notebook to have the location and/or any evidence needed. For example, the victim's location, bloodstains, bullet castings, etc. Step 10. Create a scene security register to record the identity and the arrival time of everyone who entered the crime scene after you had arrived.
Dealing with witnesses at a crime scene. The initial step is to record all of their information. 1. Their name, first and last. 2. Their address. 3. their phone number, and lastly, their date of birth.
While questioning the witnesses, remember to use open-ended questions. Cover the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and how. Witnesses should be doing most of the talking throughout the investigation. If time is an issue, gather information using point form. If any witnesses are deemed to be important witnesses during the field interview, you are to interview them at a later point in a formal investigation setting, giving them the opportunity to give you a full statement.
Dealing with suspects at a crime scene.
It is imperative that the suspect be removed from the crime scene as soon as possible. The Ontario Major Case Management Manual provides the following instructions when a suspect is arrested at or near the crime scene. 1. In the event that the suspect has used a firearm or has evidence on his or her hands, he or she shall not be allowed to wash his or her hands. Clothing and footwear may need to be seized for possible trace of evidence. Hair and biological samples may be needed for comparison purposes as well. You as an officer can arrest possible suspects according to Section 495 of the Criminal Code. 495 states that a peace officer may arrest without a warrant: A person who has committed an indictable offense or who, on reasonable grounds, he believes has committed or is about to commit an indictable offense.
Securing and protecting the crime scene.
So firstly, you need to take control of the scene upon your arrival. Determine the extent to which the scene thus far has been protected. Ensure adequate scene security. Obtain information for personnel who have entered the scene and have knowledge relative to its original conditions. Document who has been on the scene. Take extensive notes. Don't rely on your memory. Lastly, keep out unauthorized personnel from the crime scene. Begin recording who enters and who leaves.
Use of notebook by the officer.
Crucial information to keep in your notebook: the date and time you were notified by dispatch, the date and time of your arrival at the scene, full details of everyone present at the scene of the criminal and any action taken by them prior to your arrival, statements from your victims and witnesses, details of any evidence found at the scene, details of a sketch of the physical scene such as victims, locations, and description of the doors, windows that could have been broken, that were locked, or that were open, etc. Details of any unusual activity, nearby vehicles, orders, weather conditions, road connections, etc. Details and time of all the people leaving the crime scene. The pronouncement of death, if applicable. The conditions, if they exist. That cause for immediate seizure of evidence without a warrant. And lastly, the date and time of your departure from the scene.
Legal issues.
Some legal issues in relation to a crime scene investigation revolve around the fact of the legal search of evidence in relation to having a warrant or not. There are no legal search requirements for the search of a crime scene unless the offender has some form of control over the property or has an interest in the property. Luckily, in most cases, they don't have either. An example of this could be if a person of the public reported a break and enter. The store owner gives consent to the police officer once they are contacted, therefore giving the offender no rights to privacy. First responders are authorized to enter under common law, to enter violent scenes without any form of warrant, whether that to search for victims, offenders, or weapons in regards to the safety of others. This can be related back to the Criminal Code, Section 487.11, where a warrant not necessary.
Legal rights of offenders and witnesses.
To avoid any legal issues when arresting the suspect, you as the police officer need to ensure that you read and explain them their rights. If interviewing any witnesses, ensure to let them know that everything that they are saying is being recorded and used towards the investigation before beginning the interview.
Securing evidence.
Evidence is crucial when it comes to an investigation. Therefore, in order to have the best clean evidence, you need to follow the following steps. 1. Do not move anything in the area of the crime scene. 2. Avoid disturbing or altering any evidence. 3. Use a camera or take videos and pictures before moving anything. 4. Protect any forensic evidence. 5. New evidence that was found or moved needs to be recorded. Include who, where, and when it was found and located. 6. The person who seized the evidence needs to keep possession until it can be given to the police and properly stored. 7. Keep all evidence separate from one another so no confusion will occur. 8. Blood-stained items are to be stored in a plastic bag. 9. Witnesses should be kept separate from one another. Record their statements separately. 10. If there is a computer involved, you do not touch it, and you are to contact your chief manager, information technology security, and IT client security services as soon as possible. 11. Turn off any other electronics that may be involved. Computers are to be turned off, and the SIM cards of cell phones are to be removed.
Dealing with the media.
Typically, the media is normally the first or second to arrive, whether that be when you arrive or shortly after. They want to get a hold of the news and spread awareness. It is important for you as an officer to speak with the media and explain to them in an appropriate professional manner. When addressing the media, never lie. Don't ignore them either. You want to avoid them thinking that they need to take things into their own hands. In doing so, they may be putting themselves at risk, which we don't want. Remember to address all the media with the same information, preventing confusion, and everyone is on good terms. So here's a few tips that you can use when you're addressing the media. So some don'ts. Don't guess. Never answer what-if questions. Talk about topics that you are unsure of. Be afraid to state that you're not sure. And give out any information that could affect or jeopardize the investigation. Some do's when talking to the media. Keep your answers short and brief. Provide a small explanation for that answer, and be honest while you're answering all the questions.